Hello and welcome back to Hour 2 of America Talks Live. Before we get to our first guest, Larry Klayman, let's take a look at this hour's top stories. President Trump says former FBI Director James Comey told him 3 times that he was not under investigation. Trump also says the whole Russia story is fake news.
This Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won.
And just hours ago, the president also gave a stern warning to Comey on the Twitter saying, quote, James Comey, better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. New York Times is reporting that President Trump demanded loyalty from Comey during a dinner at the White House about a week after Trump took office. Comey said he can only promise honesty. Also on Twitter this morning, the president touched on the confusion that's been coming out of the White House lately, saying, and I quote, it is not possible for my surrogates to stand at a podium with perfect accuracy. Maybe the best thing to do would be to cancel all future press briefings and hand out written responses for the sake of accuracy. Well, the Senate invited acting FBI Director Rod Rosenstein to a closed-door meeting next week to discuss the firing of Director Comey and the fate of the FBI investigation into Russia. And new research out of the Mayo Clinic and the University of Southern California suggests that autism is not caused by vaccines, as multiple scientific studies have proven, but rather that it is a genetic disorder. Also, autism seems to affect boys about 4 times more often than girls. For more on these stories, visit Newsmax.com. Well, joining me now is Larry Klayman. He is the founder of Freedom Watch, a former federal prosecutor, and he seems to be just the guy to talk to because, man, we've got a whole legal mess to talk about, Larry.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Let's clear this off the table really quickly. If you liked Trump, it was okay that he fired Comey. If you didn't like Trump, apparently there's a constitutional crisis. He's authoritarian, he's a tyrant, and he's a dictator. Is this country in danger, as many Democrats are now saying, of us being seized by an authoritarian government and ruled over by a dictator? Or was just the president firing an FBI director?
It was just the latter, but there was a good reason why Comey should be fired. And let me explain why he should not only be fired, but he should be called into a grand jury and possibly prosecuted for criminal obstruction of justice. They're talking about President Trump obstructing justice. This morning in the Washington Post, they're suggesting that Attorney General Jeff Sessions obstructed justice. They actually furthered justice. They didn't obstruct anything. But what we're dealing here is with the hard left, and it's run by the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, and they want the head of the president and everybody around him. But let me give you the story. We represent a whistleblower by the name of Dennis Montgomery. He was an NSA CIA contractor. He came forward with 47 hard drives, over 600 pages of information showing that President Trump, the Supreme Court justices, the Chief Justice himself, 156 judges, prominent businessmen, and even yours truly have been subject to illegal surveillance under the Fourth Amendment, unconstitutional, for years. He had more information than Snowden. I got him immunity. He delivered all that stuff to Comey and his general counsel, James Baker. They have sat on this investigation for 2 years. They buried it. They've obstructed justice. And in fact, it shows that what President Trump was saying is true, that he has been, quote, wiretapped, unquote. And because Comey was only looking at this Russian connection and not investigating the illegal surveillance by the intelligence agencies, that was a primary reason why Comey was fired, and that's legitimate. And it's not enough that he's fired. He should be subject to a grand jury, a criminal proceeding, and in my view, he should be indicted, convicted, and he should be thrown in the slammer, because this is very serious. It's not just Trump, but it's hundreds of millions of Americans that have been going through this illegal surveillance for years. We got 2 preliminary injunctions at Freedom Watch. You can read about it at www.freedomwatch.org. A few years ago, this was to stop. This was an Orwellian practice of police state as ruled by the judge, Richard Leon, and it's very serious, and Comey has covered it up. So I'll tell you something, being fired is simply not enough for Comey. He should be indicted and convicted of crimes.
Remind me of the whistleblower's name again?
Dennis Montgomery.
Dennis Montgomery. Did Mr. Montgomery keep copies of this, or did he, in effect, turn over everything he had and not keep copies? Do you not have copies that can be used to resurrect interest or create interest that doesn't seem to have ever existed in this case?
As far as I know, he turned everything over to the FBI. In fact, he even testified under oath for 3 hours to Special Agents Walter Giardina and William Barnett a few years ago. It's all there. And I've gone to the intelligence committees, House Intelligence Committee, Senate Intelligence Committee. I've gone to the Judiciary Committees, Senate Judiciary Committee, House Judiciary Committee. I said, get these documents from the FBI, make sure they're preserved. I put the FBI on notice to keep them. But you know what? The intelligence committees, they're a sham. Whether it's the Senate or the House, they don't want to push on the intelligence agencies because the intelligence agencies have dug up dirt on virtually everybody. And these politicians don't want to risk exposing their boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever, to any kind of ridicule or whatever. They may have exposed crimes by these people. So there's a total government-wide cover-up of the misuse of the intelligence agencies, which are now more powerful than the President of the United States himself. This is the major scandal here, not so-called connections with the Russians. And I got to say one other thing.
Yeah.
When is it that the left has a concern with Russia? Russia to Moscow to the left, Bernie Sanders even took his honeymoon there, is like Mecca to the Muslims, okay? They are leftists. They have a certain degree of socialism in them, if not communism, some of them. And all of a sudden they're concerned about Russia when they never cared about it before. This is leftist BS, which is intended to bring down the President of the United States. And that's all it is. It's a war between left and right. I intend to wage it legally, ethically, but it's either them or us at this point, because now it's beyond the pale. And when the Washington Post is claiming that the President and Attorney General obstructed justice, when in fact it's James Comey who has done so, this is an outrage.
Well, I don't want to let this story go just yet, because I'm curious. Senator Rand Paul has been out. He has been the guy down in Washington, D.C., and the only person that I'm aware of who's been expressing outrage. It's been a source of concern for us here on Newsmax TV that nobody's talking about it. Is Senator Paul, have you talked with him? He seems like a guy who might want to drive this whole thing forward and out into the open.
I respect what Senator Paul's been saying, and I agree with it. Years ago, when I filed these lawsuits, I went to see Senator Paul.
Okay.
He didn't, quote, have time, unquote. He filed a lawsuit after I did, claiming that he was the first to file it. He wasn't. And then he let it drop for years. So I hope that his interest has been reinvigorated. I would like to work with Senator Paul on this because he's right about it. But we've been in the forefront at Freedom Watch, not Senator Paul, and I would like him to join what we're doing. In fact, his lawyer was Ken Cuccinelli, former gubernatorial candidate in Virginia. Ken's quite a nice guy. And I hope to work with him. So I hope that Senator Paul will now come to us at Freedom Watch and say, let's work together, because this is a serious matter. We cannot have an Orwellian police state. And that's what we have right now. And the president can't pick up the phone and talk to anybody. My phone was hacked last week. I'm filing a new case against the NSA and CIA. It's the third time it's happened. We can't conduct business. We can't do the affairs of state if you're the president, if you're constantly being watched by the intelligence agencies, and then they're going to leak the information like they did with General Mike Flynn and others in the Trump administration. This is really serious, and that's why I say Comey should go to jail. Firing is not enough for him.
Well, yeah, and what's odd is that the Democrats are not picking up on this at all. I mean, the Democrats seem to be obsessed with this notion, and we heard it this week, of the impeachment clock, that we need to impeach President Trump, and they are ignoring revelations that James Clapper and that the NSA and the FBI were in fact spying on us. We know that, what, 2,500, about 2,500 people were American citizens, not people, American citizens were unmasked in 2015. Another 2,000 in 2016. We've seen the IRS become a political arm of an administration. None of this is as it should be. So why in name seven do we not have Democrats who you think would be actually, oddly, one of your most serious allies in this?
Well, you would think so. When we brought the suits initially, actually the left was more favorably disposed to our lawsuits than some people on the right. So it is a nonpartisan issue, and I've always been nonpartisan. I'm a conservative and a libertarian, and I'm proud of it. But yeah, we're willing to cooperate with the left on this. Now, we brought the lawsuits first. The ACLU, who frankly otherwise I don't have much respect for, brought lawsuits after that. They failed. We succeeded in getting 2 preliminary injunctions. That changed the law, by the way, to the USA Freedom Act, which says that now this information, at least in terms of telephonic metadata, has to stay in hands of the telephone providers like Verizon, Sprint, and AT&T, and only can be obtained under warrant. But we now know that that hasn't happened. They violated the law. And I've gone back to the judge in this case, Leon, who's been relatively inert in the last few years, but hopefully he'll get energized now and come back and hold these agencies in criminal contempt. And here's a problem, too. We not only have the intelligence committees covering this up, perhaps because they fear that dirt about them will be released, but we also have people in the intelligence agencies that President Trump has put in there, like Mike Pompeo of the CIA, who seems very sympathetic to this kind of stuff. And Trump should beware, because people are in and around him may not be loyal to him, and they may not be willing to enforce the rule of law when, in fact, their oxes may get gored if they go against the powers.
This is a dramatic and intense story, and Larry, thanks for coming on and talking about it. Larry Klayman, Judicial Watch. That's terrific. We're gonna jump to break, and when we come back, we'll have the political panel. But first, if you ever suffer a cardiac arrest outside of a hospital, you have just a 7% chance of survival. It's true, and yes, it's scary. In fact, heart disease kills more people than any other condition in the United States. No one is more aware of this than world-renowned cardiologist Dr. Chauncey Crandall. He is the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Simple Heart Cure. Now, you can learn your heart risk and make sure that you are not part of this 93% that don't survive a heart attack. You can take Dr. Crandall's free simple heart test right now to see your heart risk. Just go to simplehearttest.com.